Hi everyone, so this is the first video I'm making in 2018, so firstly, Happy New Year. And I've noticed a lot of people are making videos about their sort of resolutions or reading plans for this year. And I was a bit hesitant to do it at first because the idea of concrete plans and rules for myself is not something that I've ever really enjoyed having, and I find it more of a stress than a motivator. But there are certain things in regards to reading that I would like to accomplish or push myself to do more of this year, so I thought I would share them with you here. I didn't really keep track of how many books I read in 2017 or what categories of books I read, and it's something that I would be interested in doing this year, so I have started using Goodreads to an extent. I still don't really like rating books, but I am using it to sort of keep track of which books I'm reading when. And of course they have the function to choose how many books you would like to read in a given year. And I don't really want to fix myself on a certain number because for me the goal should always be just to enjoy reading rather than to read as much as I possibly can. I have set a number and I've set it to 50 because I think this is a fairly achievable goal for me in 2018. It gives me something to work towards, but it's not something that I'm going to beat myself up about if I don't actually achieve it. Because I am a student this year, there are times of the year that I will be extremely busy and probably won't read a great deal, and other times where I'll have large amounts of free time where I'll get a lot of books read. So it's hard to really judge how many books I can read in a given year because no year is the same for me. Since I'm doing a master's this year, it's quite different to my previous undergraduate degree. But I anticipate over the summer certainly I will have a lot of time, so I don't think it's a ridiculous sort of target to set myself at 50 books. What I'm more interested in, however, is where I'm planning on getting these books from and which type of books I would like to read. And firstly, in terms of where I'm planning on getting these books, I want to be a little bit more conscious about where I'm putting my money and my resources. So firstly, I would like to use my local library more. Partly because I want to support them and I feel like they really need the support right now, but partly because it's just a great service that I rarely use. It's a place that you can get free books. Is that not just the best thing in the world? Also, in terms of purchasing books, I want to make a concerted effort to purchase more from physical bookshops rather than on Amazon. And there's a lot of reasons for this. I mean, Amazon don't necessarily have the best reputation in terms of tax evasion and employee rights, but also because the publisher receives a much smaller cut of the profits from books purchased on Amazon rather than through a retailer. So I would really like to try and buy books more from bookshops. Of course, that will include Waterstones, which I love, but I would also like to try and purchase more from independent bookshops because, again, I think they need that support, and also it's really nice to give back to your local community by buying from these smaller independent shops who could really use that boost. Also, I think the experience of going into a local and smaller bookshop is just a nicer one than going into a big chain. It just has a different vibe, it feels cozier and friendlier, much less corporate, and you can sometimes find a really interesting and different selection of books in these places. Leading on from the point about trying to purchase more ethically, I'd also like to try and purchase books that are published by smaller publishing companies. Since I've been studying publishing in my master's, there has been a lot of talk about sort of the differences and the pros and cons of large publishing conglomerates against smaller, more independent ones. But I would like to make that effort to purchase more books from smaller publishers, and in particular in my case from Scottish publishers because that's where I'm from, because I would like to actually support the industry in this country, and I believe it's important for independent publishers to have a voice that can rival that of the much bigger conglomerates. It is difficult because there is often sometimes a monopoly on published books, and of course, you know, Penguin is absolutely massive and they publish some of my absolute favourite books and my favourite authors, but you can find really amazing books published by much smaller companies. I also plan to attend more literary events in 2018. I did start doing this a little bit towards the end of 2017, But I am incredibly lucky to live in Edinburgh, where there is the Edinburgh Book Festival every summer, which is massive, and it's a really global event, and we have some incredible authors and speakers talk about their work. But also lots of bookshops in this city and around Scotland host amazing events by really world-class authors, and also more up-and-coming authors that are from the local area. And again, I think what I'm planning on doing really is just trying to support the sort of infrastructure around publishing and writing, and that it really helps authors and publishers to go along to these events and listen to what they have to say. I've also been thinking about what sort of books I plan on reading in 2018. And again, I don't want to say absolutely this is how many books I'm going to read by these specific categories, but I do, again, just want to be a bit more conscious about the types of books I'm reading. And firstly, I would really like to read 50% of the books I read written by women. I think this is for fairly obvious reasons. I found some incredible new authors last year who are female, and some of my favourite historical writing is by women. So I don't think this is going to be particularly difficult for me, because I really love so many women's writing. But I really believe in equality in all industries and within writing and publishing, and I think to enact change it has to start from the bottom, from people who choose to read books, by being more conscious about the books that we do read. Along the same lines, I also want to be more aware of how many books I'm reading that are by white authors, and it is always a majority, and that can be so easy to fall into without realising, because the majority of books you find in big bookshops are by white authors, and the majority are by white male authors. And I just want to make that effort again, just to read more books by Black, Asian and minority ethnic authors. And I have written a number down. I've said I would like to read 15 books by non-white authors, and I feel like this is a very conservative goal. I am sure I will be able to read more than that, but at least setting that number will again just give me a target. I just want to be more aware every time I'm picking up a book of who the author is and what story they're telling, and sometimes as well, do they have the right to tell this story? Can a person of colour perhaps tell this story more accurately, or should I be seeing a different perspective on this narrative? This isn't intended to be a box-ticking exercise either. I really don't want it to be like that. It's more that I genuinely want to read more books by non-white people, just to gain more understanding of different perspectives, different histories, the history of oppression and of discrimination. For the same reasons as I want to read more books by women, because I feel like we can work together to change things, but only if we understand what needs to be changed. Next, I also want to try and read more non-fiction. I do really enjoy non-fiction, but it's always a little bit more of a challenge to pick up, especially when it's quite a dense and heavy topic, which I tend to like to read about. So yeah, I just want to try and make myself actually pick up these books. Again, I've set the conservative goal of 10 non-fiction books, and I know there are more than 10 that I already would like to read in 2018, so I'm sure I will achieve that. But it is just about finding that strength to actually start reading them in the first place. And next, I also want to read some poetry this year. I just don't read poetry. I have honestly never really enjoyed any poetry that I've read, which sounds terrible. There are a few poems that I've been like, okay, I get it, I understand the hype. But generally, I find very old poetry confusing and makes me feel stupid, and modern poetry makes me feel the same, to be honest. I don't get it. So I want to find some poetry that I feel like resonates with me a little bit, because I feel like I'm missing out on such a huge chunk of literature. So again, I've said I would like to read 5 books of poetry in 2018. That's like one every other month. I'm sure I can manage that. The one more specific goal about types of books that I want to read in 2018 would be that I want to read some ancient Greek tragedies and plays. I've not really read any, but I've kind of collected a few over the last few months, which have been sort of just sitting on my shelves, and I know that if I don't make myself read them, I won't, even though I'm really interested in them, just because I anticipate them being quite challenging, and I don't know very much about Greek history or ancient Greece, or certainly ancient Greek, although they're not in Greek. But I'm sure they'll be really rewarding once I do actually read them. So I've set these goals that I think will be challenging in some aspects. They'll make me think more about what I'm reading and why, and think more about the ethics of writing and publishing. But most of all, I want to choose books this year to read that I genuinely feel excited to read, and not ones that I feel an obligation to read or that will make me feel accomplished or smart or will make me in with the crowd, but ones that I cannot wait to be published and to read myself. So I'm making this video with sort of a list of things I want to achieve, but I'm not going to be extremely harsh on myself if I don't quite make it, because of course your reading is dependent on the circumstances of your life as well, and I don't know if I'm going to have a job straight after I finish my masters or what my circumstances will be, so I can't really plan too much ahead. But as I said, what I want most is just to try and relax and enjoy reading, because for me the pleasure that I gain from reading is the main reason that I do it. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you liked hearing my reading plans for this year. I'd love to hear yours if you made any specific ones, or if you've made any of the same ones as I have. And I'll be back with a video in a few days, so I'll see you soon. Bye bye!